the chit-chatting going on between Bob Costas and the other broadcasters. And that was just an interesting situation that we were at the game. Your dad and I were at that game when that O.J. car chase took place. And so it was sometime probably in the mid to late 90s that we made the leapfrog from the 7th row to the 4th row. And we stayed in that row, and we loved it. And as like you said, when you went into the that section, that floor-level section, it was cool, of course, getting off at the first level of the escalator ride up, to get off at the lowest level that you could get off at.
Right.
We didn't used to joke, but we just used to notice how not that many people got off at the first level, and so many people continued on. I think your dad and I felt kind of an importance, a self-importance to ourselves, honestly, and that
it's cool.
We were first level ticket holders.
Yeah,
and
it's so cool.
We get off, and as you said, as we walk through the hallway, that hallway also led to the Knicks locker room. So sometimes we'd see players coming and going from the locker room into the hallway, and you'd walk alongside them. Did
you ever get to high five any of those players, or any of those players look at you and make eye contact?
I don't think I did a high five. I just remember saying hi. Hey, how you doing?
Right.
How you doing, Patrick?
Oh my, that's so cool.
Yeah, this is certainly during the Patrick era, which was a pretty long era. And then as we walked, then you walk into the entrance to the Garden. It's almost like that Yankee Stadium experience where you walk through a hallway or something, and then all of a sudden there's the floor right in front of you in the Garden. And I remember walking past celebrities like, I think that was Warren Beatty that I just walked past. As they were making their way towards their courtside seats, and it was just a lot of fun. And so we really enjoyed those seats, and it was also something that we could invite not only other family and friends to go, but they were very good for business also, to take clients to games.
Right.
It was very impressive to bring a client to a Knick game where you're sitting in the 4th row and you're literally looking up at the players.
Yeah.
And, we had a good look at so many of the players, all the stars over the years from those seats. Michael Jordan from his first year in around 1985 to, all the superstars that came along during those years. So at some point, so there was a point, and now I guess it was probably 5-6 years ago. I'm losing track a little bit. But as you know, there was a point where we got a notice from the Garden after the season. So our tickets, I do recall, I believe they maxed out at $110 each.
Right.
$120 or $110, $110 each. Of course, that was not cheap, but that price level, that price kept at the same level for a number of years. And your dad and I used to say, as we got our renewals, geez, we're pretty lucky. We're sitting on the floor here, and they've kept the tickets at $110 for like 4 or 5 years in a row. I mean, we've got a really good deal because we could look 15 feet or 20 feet in front of us and see Spike Lee in his $2,500 seat,
right?
Whatever it was at the time, his $5,000 sideline, courtside seat. So there was a significant price jump between the end zone seats that we had and the sideline seats, but we had a great view.
I remember being so close, and as a kid thinking, if I shout as loud as I can get the players' attention. I don't think.
Oh yeah, and believe me, your dad used to like to shout at him.
Yeah,
he was.
That's a like father like son moment. Yes, yeah.
Well, as you would recall personally, of course, too. He wasn't shy about yelling out, "Come on!" Play it, or more often than not, really yelling at the refs.
Yeah,
Your dad was a good ref baiter, ref yeller, and they could most certainly hear you because we were only 10 to 12 feet away from the nearest corner of the court.
Right.
And those were great seats. So then 7-8 years ago, whatever it was, I got the notice from the Garden saying that our $110 seats will be elevating in price to $280.
Right, yeah. I remember that.
So that was from 110 to 280, and your dad and I and our other friends Phil and Richie in the group at that point were shocked. We were just totally taken aback. This was when the Garden was undergoing its renovation. Or about
yeah.
We discussed this amongst ourselves and decided that it just didn't make sense to continue with those seats at that price, because now you're talking about, $560 for a pair of tickets, and and we would also take friends, and so do I invite it? I didn't mind I never asked a friend to pay for their ticket. They would usually pay for dinner if I took a friend to a game at 110. I never would ask. But at $280, I mean, it just became unrealistic to even take a friend or do anything. So I reached out to the Garden, and they said, well, it's with your tenure so many years in at that point, we'll look to replace you. I said, we want to be replaced in whatever the best tickets would be or the best seats would be at a somewhat comparable price to what we've been paying. And they were able to place us in the seats that we currently have, which are more in the corner. It was something that was sad to have to move up. I mean, it really was sad when we had to give up those fourth-row seats on the floor and move up to these. But the seats that we have now are highly acceptable. It's just not the same as it was. But we had a good run with those seats on the floor.
Yeah.
And, those are times that I'll never forget, sitting down there. And, we were like VIPs in our own right, having the courtside seats or, the end zone fourth row.
That's how I felt, too, going as a kid, going to all these games with my dad. And I felt like none of my friends at school were ever fourth row. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I remember we did when we first had tickets the first year. There was a guy named Mike Smith, I remember, from our high school. Somehow, and it must have been through his family or something, he had seats on the floor, and we would go down to say hello to him, and it's like, wow, it's a different world. We walk down from our green seats and say hi to this schoolmate that was down on the floor, and it was just a whole different world. And then we go back up to our seats.
Right.
So then when we finally did manage to go down onto the floor there, we really felt special. It's a different. It is really a different game when you're down there and you're that close, and you can yell at the players and yell at the refs, and really hear the squeaking of the sneakers that much more distinctly and everything. It's great. We had a good run, and we were thankful that the Knick prices, the ticket prices, did remain fairly level for a number of years.
Who got to go? Because by this time, you got your tickets after the first trip to the finals, but then they went to the finals in 72, they went to the finals in 73, and that's when they won. Who got to go to those finals games? Was it, out of your group? Do you remember?
Well, I'll tell you one thing that I remember most distinctly, and it's not the thrill of 73 or the finals of 72. One game that your dad and I remember being with your dad at, that I remember most distinctly, was in the 70-71 series where they lost to the Bullets. And I think it came down to a Game 7. And we were at that game, in which I can just remember as clearly as anything, with Bradley dribbling to the left corner and heaving up a jumper that missed. And I guess it was either going to tie or win that game, because I know they lost by just a hair on that game. And that's a game I distinctly remember being at. The tickets, of course, were so inexpensive that none of us were looking to sell them. We
of course
didn't need to sell.
You don't sell Knick playoff tickets.
No, exactly not. And then from there was so many games. Going to maybe 8-9 games a year. They become a little bit of a blur. Of course, I'll never forget, Michael Jordan coming in and hitting those dagger jumpers and, invariably beating the Knicks, or at least more often than not. And I do remember going to the Knicks Bulls playoff games and all that. And, boy, those were some exciting games. Those are when they would still, play in the afternoon. I remember springtime, there was nothing more fun than going to a Knick game on a sunny day in April or May, whenever the playoffs were rolling around. And it was very often a Sunday afternoon game being played at home. And I just remember, going in the bright sunshine of a Sunday afternoon into a Knick playoff game. And there's no better place to be at that time.
Oh, man. Yeah. That sounds amazing.
Yeah.
All right, let's do our lightning round. 5 questions, quick answers. We'll debate them. Let's start off with, who is your favorite Knick? We open this up to not just players, but coaches, any member of the organization.
Walt Frazier. I'll just do first thoughts. Walt Frazier, and
well,
just for no other reason aside from just everything he brought to that team, from fashion and just the sense of style, but of course his playing ability, and I can never give him. Nobody could ever give him enough credit for his performance in that Game 7 in 1970 against the Lakers, where he had 36 points.
Right.
And 16 assists, or double-digit assists, and he just willed that team to victory with a hobbled Willis Reed. And if it wasn't for that game that he played, I don't know if the Knicks would have won that series.
Now, watching Clyde, it just seemed like he could do it all. He filled up the stat sheet every night, averaged 19, 6 and 6, 2 steals a game. I mean, he just did everything for the Knicks. He was one of the first point guards to really be that way. And now you see it all the time with guys like Westbrook and even Kemba Walker. It just seemed like Clyde was the first to do it. Watching him live, did you feel like he was on another shelf, just better than everybody else on the court? Or if it wasn't Clyde, who was it for you?
Benard King. If you talk about thinking back, to your point now about thinking back to an athlete that literally seemed to elevate themselves. Now, your dad and I used to love going to those games in the mid-'80s, 83, 84, those prime seasons before Benard unfortunately injured his knee. But we had I have indelible memories of Benard on the break. Benard coming towards us on the break, on the wing, getting the ball and just flying to the basket and elevating the dunk. And those are memories I remember. And similarly, I remember too many of those memories with Michael Jordan doing the same thing, but I don't remember those moments as fondly as I do Benard on the break. And those are some moments that I do recall in my mind's eye. Benard on the break and just exploding to the basket.
I am very jealous. I wish I had that memory.
Oh, yeah. Throwing it down.
All right, so we go with favorite player. Now I want to go to the opposite. Who's your least favorite Knick? The one Knick that you just you hated rooting for. You had to root for him because he was a Knick, but you didn't want to.
Oh boy, but there's so many. I remember not being that thrilled with Marvin Webster when he came in, the eraser. Marvin was a 7-foot tall guy. Your dad and I used to say that we kind of likened him to Frankenstein just because he had these kind of mummified knee bandages on and was so immobile. Now, he did have a couple of good seasons with the Knicks, but we were just not that thrilled with Marvin Webster.
Yeah.
When he came to the Knicks. I just remember just a feeling of disappointment. I think it may have been a time. I don't know I can't recall if he did. I guess there was some time that he did the Twin Towers with Bill Cartwright. But we just thought that Marvin, like he just can't shoot. I mean, he was great, obviously known as a defensive player. But, we appreciated a player that could also score a couple of points.
I'm looking at Marvin Webster's stats. His first year at the Knicks, he had 11 points, 10 boards, 11 points, 11 boards. But then after that, it was 4 points, 4 boards, 5 points, 5 boards. And we kept him for 6 seasons. And only one season does it actually seem like he was productive.
Well, thank you for at least supporting my point.
So,
yeah, first season, I guess we're happy.
I don't have firsthand knowledge of seeing him play, but I can see in the box score why you guys never liked him.
Right. Well, imagine if you put splints around both of your legs and then played basketball. I mean, that's the way he walked.
Right.
His legs never bent.
There was a campaign a few years ago where they had a saying, it was once a Knick, always a Knick. And every time I think of that saying, I always think of these random Knick players. I'll give you a few examples. It's players essentially who they don't have their names hanging in the rafters. It's not Benard King. It's not Carmelo Anthony. It's not the big time All-Stars who were Knicks for many, many years. But it's guys like, I always say, like